It was a cold winter evening, the kind that seeped through your coat and into your bones. Alex pushed open the heavy oak doors of her family estate, stomping snow from her boots. The scent of cinnamon, wine, and polished wood hung thick in the air. She hadn't been told about any gathering. Just a quick family thing, her mother had texted. The warmth of the living room hit her like a wall. Everyone was there, her parents on the velvet couch, her brother John standing smugly near the fireplace, even distant cousins she hadn't seen in years. Laughter floated through the air. Glasses clanked. A cake sat on the side table, half cut, pink roses decorating the top. But it wasn't the laughter or the crowd that stopped her cold. It was the banner, quickly hung above the fireplace, with silver letters that read, "Congratulations, John and Daniel." The name shattered inside her like a dropped wine. Glass, Daniel, her Daniel. The one who once traced poetry on her back with soft fingers. The one who whispered forever against her neck under moonlit rooftops. The one who promised they'd figure it out together. Alex's breath caught. The room didn't notice. John cleared his throat and launched into a speech. Something about fate, about how it all just happened so naturally. He looked proud, sheepish in the way people do when they know they've taken something they didn't earn. The words blurred around Alex as blood roared in her ears. And then she saw Daniel, standing next to John, wearing ivory. Not white. Daniel hated white. Her hands were clasped in front of her. She looked like she'd forgotten how to breathe. But she didn't look at Alex, not once. Alex's mother beamed, reaching over to pat Daniel's hand. "Finally," she said loudly, her voice filled with syrupy pride. "A normal daughter-in-law. Someone we can truly welcome into the family." The syllables sliced deep. Alex's fingers curled into fists at her sides. Her legs felt locked in place, like her body couldn't decide whether to flee or crumble. No one looked at her. No one acknowledged what this was. No one dared speak her name, or maybe they all knew. The room began to spin. She turned and bolted, boots slipping slightly on the polished floor, down the hallway, out the front door, into the cold. The snow had thickened, layering the stone steps in white silence. Her breath came in short gasps as she stood on the porch, hands shaking, trying to understand what had just happened. Her throat burned. Behind her, the door creaked open. "Alex." Daniel's voice came soft, barely a whisper against the wind. Alex didn't turn. "Don't," she said. Her voice cracked on the word. Daniel stepped closer. The porch light bathed her in amber, outlining her trembling figure. "They're forcing me," she said, her voice breaking. "Your mother, John, everything. I didn't know what to do." Alex turned slowly, eyes burning. "You said you'd fight for us." "You said nothing could make you lie?" "I thought I could find a way out," Daniel whispered. "But then they started threatening to out me to my job, to my parents." "You let him put a ring on your hand?" Alex hissed, the betrayal sharpening every syllable. "You let them turn you into their prize, into his." Daniel looked away, tears brimming. "I thought I could protect us, but I couldn't even protect myself." Alex stared at her, this woman she had loved in corners and shadows who once swore she'd light up the dark with her. And now she stood before her, broken, compliant, collared. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Only the wind spoke, cruel and cold. Then Alex stepped back. Without another word, she turned and walked down the snowy steps. The sound of her boots crunching ice echoed across the empty yard. Daniel didn't follow. You never forget the first time someone's voice changes the way you breathe. For me, it was at a rooftop poetry night hosted by a mutual friend I barely liked. The air was heavy with incense and rain clouds, and I was only there to avoid another. Dinner where my mother asked if I had met any nice boys lately. That night, Daniel stepped under the string lights with a notebook in hand and a red scarf wrapped twice around her neck. Her voice cracked a little on the first line, then steadied like she was reading straight from her own ribcage. The poem was about windows. How some stay shut for so long that when they finally open, the air feels dangerous. I remember gripping my wine glass too tightly, afraid that if I blinked, I'd lose the sound of her. Afterward, she smiled at me, soft, tentative, like we already had a secret. We talked. Then we kept talking in stairwells, bookstores, the back of quiet cafes. It wasn't long before I kissed her in the parking lot behind a Thai restaurant. It felt like gravity had tilted just for us. That was the beginning. We didn't fall in love all at once. We fell in places, inside blanket forts with bad takeout, inside library books we left notes in the way her fingers lingered when she handed me paintbrushes, but we were careful. She wasn't out, not to anyone. Her mother still thought she'd marry a pastor's son. Her whole world had been built on appearances and silence. I understood that kind of fear. I'd lived in it for years. I was out in the city with friends in the half-truths I told coworkers, but at home I was Alex the face. Alex the rebel. Alex who used to be such a good girl. My mother's disapproval wasn't loud, but it echoed. It showed up in backhanded comments. You'll understand when you have a real relationship. I just want you to be safe and normal. I didn't raise you to throw your life away on a trend. My father said even less. Just silence, tightening of jaws, and long sighs when I walked in wearing anything too sharp. I stayed, out of habit, guilt, some warped sense of loyalty. I kept hoping they'd come around. That one day, my mother would look at Daniel and see what I saw, a miracle in motion, and then there was John. My brother, the golden boy, the pride of our family. 6 feet of confidence, ambition, and charm that always ran just 1 degree too. Cold. He met Daniel at a holiday dinner. I remember her trying to hold my hand under the table while John talked about his new investment clients. Later that night, he cornered me in the kitchen with a half smile and said, "You sure she's not just waiting for someone with more?" I laughed, brushed it off. He was teasing. That's what I told myself. But even then, something prickled. Took a strange interest in her, always praising her feminine energy, asking for her help with events, tagging her in group messages even when I wasn't included. Daniel always said it was harmless, that he was just friendly, but now I wonder, when did it start to change? Was it when my parents started inviting her over more than me? When my mother called her the kind of woman who deserves a good husband? I remember one afternoon, it's burned into me now, when I found Daniel in the garden with my mother. They were trimming roses together. My mother was laughing, light and effortless in a way she rarely was around me. Daniel looked up and smiled when she saw me, but it faded quickly. There was something unreadable in her eyes. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. But now the pieces rearrange themselves. The quiet garden whispers make more sense. The way Daniel pulled away from our plans. The way she said she was tired more often. They didn't just ignore our love. They repackaged it, sanitized it, made it presentable by removing me. I think that's what hurts most. Not just the betrayal, but the ERSURE. My love was never just hidden. It was stolen. REBRANDED. As if I was just the trial version before. The real thing. As if I was just the whisper before the announcement. But I remember every look, every breath, every time Daniel whispered, "I'm yours," like it was a prayer. And I know, deep in my marrow, that we were real, that in the corners of candlelit nights and whispered promises, something sacred lived, even if the world tried to bury it in banners and rings that never belonged to them, even if I have to dig it out with my bare hands. There are moments in life that don't feel real as they're happening, like your body has gone numb in defense. Leaving your soul to flinch alone, walking into my parents' house that Sunday. Afternoon was one of them. The walls were covered in blush-colored streamers. Pastel balloons floated by the staircase. A gaudy sign hung quickly above the mantel, bride to be. There were cupcakes shaped like roses, champagne glasses wrapped in lace, and a table overflowing with cards addressed to Mrs. John Daniels. And somewhere in the middle of all that glittered nonsense stood Daniel, in a soft pink dress I had never seen before. The same red scarf, our scarf, was nowhere in sight. She looked distant, doll-like, smiling too much, moving too little. Her eyes flicked toward me just once before she turned to hug someone else. I felt like a ghost. Like someone had died and they forgot to bury me. You could have at least done something with your hair. My mother hissed at me as she passed. You look like a protest. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat felt like it was closing in. The scent of lavender candles and sugar icing made me nauseous. Everything was too loud laughter, clinking glass, someone playing Taylor. Swift on a speaker in the kitchen, Daniel never once looked directly at me. I wandered upstairs, stepping around floral heels and gossiping cousins. I didn't even know where I was going until I opened the door to my old bedroom. Hadn't changed much. My mother was always sentimental in a performative way. The walls were still pale blue. My bookshelf still held the same half-read novels and high school trophies. I sat down on the edge of the bed, breathing through the tightness in my chest. The smell of old dust and vanilla polish surrounded me like a blanket. I didn't want. That's when I saw it. Tucked behind the wardrobe, half hidden beneath a pile of photo albums. A small brown box. No label. No lock. Just twine tied once. Around the middle, as if someone had packed it in a rush and left it behind. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were the things I thought she'd thrown away. My letters. The ones I wrote during the first winter we spent apart when she went home to her mother and I stayed in the city. I had poured pieces of myself into those letters. Poems, confessions, stupid jokes about the future. Pressed flowers from the garden behind my apartment building. A photo booth strip from the county fair. A folded napkin with our initials in red. Ink drawn by a bored waitress who said we looked like trouble. She had kept them all. My chest split open quietly. The kind of pain that doesn't make a sound at first. It just sits there, heavy, like something sacred turned sour. Then I heard the door open. I didn't turn right away. I knew who it was before I heard her voice. Alex. She whispered. I looked up, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, our eyes met without a crowd between us. She looked older. Not in years, but in sadness. There were dark shadows beneath her eyes. Her hands were trembling, just slightly, like she was trying to hold herself together from the outside in. Why? I asked, just one word. But it was everything. She stepped forward, then stopped. I didn't want this. I swear, I didn't want. Her voice cracked and she pressed a hand to her mouth. Then why? I stood now, the box still in my hands. Why this? Why now? They told me they'd cut off my mother's insurance. She said, finally, the words like vomit. They said she'd lose the house, that I'd be ruined. That you would be ruined. Your father offered John a stake in the company if I said yes, and you did. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but I couldn't cry anymore. I thought maybe I could survive it, pretend, hide you in the corners of my heart. I stared at her, at this woman I had once imagined a forever with, and all I saw was someone drowning while pretending to swim. You're not pretending anymore. Daniel, I whispered. You're disappearing. That's when she broke. Her knees hit the carpet, her arms wrapped around herself. Her sobs weren't delicate. They were violent, full-body tremors. It was the sound of someone unraveling. I'm sorry, she kept repeating. I'm so sorry. Please, please go. It's better for you if you leave. My chest heaved. The pain in my ribcage had nowhere to go. I wanted to hold her, shake her, kiss her, scream. Instead, I dropped the box. Its contents scattered like dead leaves on the floor. That's when the door flew open at my mother. Her expression snapped into horror, then fury. What are you doing? Are you trying to ruin this too? She's not okay, I started, pointing to Daniel. I said, get out. Her hand flew before I saw it. A slap, open palm, sharp and deliberate, landed across my cheek. Dniel. Screamed. Footsteps thundered down the hall. My father appeared, then John. The hallway swelled with voices. John stepped into the room, smirking. She chose me, he said coolly. You should have seen the signs. The rage rose from somewhere below language. I screamed, a raw, guttural sound that shook the walls. The kind of scream that comes from knowing you were never seen, only tolerated. Never loved, only allowed. And then I ran. I ran down the stairs, past the guests, through the balloons and giggles and champagne flutes. I drove for hours, through red lights, past the city limits, into back roads I hadn't seen since high school. I didn't cry right away, not even when my cheek began to swell, not even when the gas tank hit empty, and I pulled over into an empty field. I just sat there, hands gripping the wheel, staring at the horizon. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you remember everything. And then I knew they weren't going to bury me with politeness and shame. They weren't going to steal my love, then rewrite my story like I was a footnote. I wasn't going to let them marry her into a lie and call it salvation. They wanted a neat little life, a boxed-in bride, a sister who smiled and nodded, but I was wildfire, and they had no idea what they just lit. The wedding was 5 days away. Every morning brought new social media posts, photos of floral arrangements, bridal fittings, champagne brunches. I watched from burner accounts, scrolling like I was bleeding under glass. Her smile in those photos didn't reach her eyes. Her posture was perfect, too perfect, like someone who'd rehearsed every breath. On the 4th day, I called her. Not her number. A new one I'd activated in a gas station bathroom 3 towns over. It rang 3 times. Then Alex? Her voice cracked on the first syllable. I held my breath. My hands trembled. Daniel, just say yes or no. Do you want out? Silence. Then a muffled sob. I'll go. But you have to come now. Midnight, I was parked 3 blocks from her house in a rusted blue rental I paid cash for. The engine ticked softly as it cooled in the night air. My heart felt like it had learned a new kind of panic, a fluttering, low-grade dread that settled into my bones. I didn't know if she'd come, and then I saw her. She moved fast, hood up, a single duffel bag over her shoulder. She didn't look back, just opened the passenger door and slid in like she was diving into water. We didn't speak. I started the engine. The roads blurred beneath us, freeway signs, gas stations, endless black sky. We didn't stop until we hit a motel somewhere in Arizona. We checked in under fake names, Rachel and Lynn. The desk clerk barely looked at us. Inside the room, she collapsed onto the bed, her hand still clutching mine like a lifeline. I brought nothing, she whispered. Just this. She held up a photo of us, creased from being folded too many times. One I thought she'd deleted long ago. I reached out and touched her cheek. You brought the only thing that matters. The first few weeks were chaos. We tossed our phones, cut cards. I scrubbed our digital footprint clean. Every account wiped. Every shared message deleted. Even our playlist, -gone.denie. Elle dyed her hair dark brown in a gas station bathroom. I cut mine in a truck stop stall. I never thought hiding would feel like grieving, but it did. We crossed into Mexico with tourist passports, took a series of flights using forged documents and forged courage. Eventually, we landed in Portugal. Why Portugal? Because it was the last place her mother would ever guess. And because I once told Daniel that the cliffs of Lagos look like something out of a dream, we found a tiny town by the costa, place that smelled of salt and citrus, and where no one knew our names. We became Claire and Mara. I bartended at a local beach shack. Daniel painted in the mornings, slept in the afternoons, and sometimes woke up crying in the middle of the night. We were safe, but not whole. Trauma is a strange house guest. It doesn't always knock. Sometimes it slips in through the windows, lies in your bed, and whispers that you don't deserve peace. For weeks, Daniel barely ate. She stood in doorways like she was waiting for someone to drag her back. I had nightmares. Ones where I screamed her name and couldn't find her. Ones where John stood on a cliff with her wedding dress in his hands, smiling as he dropped it into the ocean. We didn't talk about the past, not right away. We lived like survivors. Half alive, half frozen, but slowly, the ice began to crack. Morning, I found Daniel outside, barefoot in the grass, painting the ocean on a canvas she found at a flea market. She looked at me and said, "The light here doesn't lie." I didn't respond, but I knew what she meant. We started leaving. The windows opened. We started sleeping without clutching each other like lifeboats. She painted. I started writing again, small things, mostly poems I never read out loud. One night, in the middle of a rainstorm, she turned to me and whispered, "I don't know if I'll ever stop being afraid." "I don't think we have to," I said. "I think we just have to live anyway." We built something quiet, not perfect, not painless, but real. We planted lavender in the windowsill. We made dinner together. We danced barefoot in the living room when we couldn't sleep. And in that quiet space, truth began to surface. One night, Daniel confessed everything. She told me about the deals made in shadows, how my parents threatened to cut off medical care for her mother if she didn't comply, how John used the engagement to secure business funding from a conservative donor, how every smile she wore in those bridal photos cost her another piece of herself. I thought I could survive it, she said, but surviving isn't living. I looked at her, at the woman I had followed through darkness, and felt something shift. We weren't running anymore. We were preparing. Even in Portugal, the past had a way of bleeding through the cracks. A cousin of mine once posted a "Have you seen her?" thread with old photos of us. I watched it go viral and die in the span of 3 days. Daniel's name still popped up in wedding registries linked to John. It was like they never officially let her go, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I was watching, learning, planning. I saw how easily truth could be buried, and I started imagining what it would look like to unearth it. She asked me once, "Would you ever go back?" I didn't answer at first. Then I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Only if I'm ready to burn everything down." She didn't flinch. She just nodded. 3 years passed, not quietly, not gently. But in the way wildfires burn away the rot to make space for a new life. Alex wasn't the same woman who once fled into the night with trembling hands and half a plan. In Portugal, she had unraveled. And then slowly, deliberately, she had rewritten herself. She studied digital security under a pseudonym, mentored by women who understood what it meant to vanish and still leave a trace of truth. She coded by candlelight, read legal loopholes like poetry, and worked remote contracts with international NGOs, protecting whistleblowers, survivors, and the kinds of rebels no government wanted to acknowledge. Daniel painted their stories. Her studio smelled of oils and salt air. Her hands were almost always stained in color. Locals adored her. Tourists bought her seascapes. But beneath it all, Daniel painted their silence, the prison she once escaped, the love letter no one was allowed to read. They were no longer hiding. They were preparing. Their love had changed. Too, gone were the desperate whispers and guilty glances. Now it was morning spent tangled in linen, coffee on the terrace, kisses that weren't afraid of sunlight. Alex no longer loved in the shadows. She loved like someone who had bled to earn it. They didn't need reminders of the past, it always found a way to echo back through anonymous messages. A news article here, a wedding anniversary post there. John had climbed fast in the world of politics, writing on charm, connections, and the illusion of a picture-perfect marriage that was never real. Their mother had gone on record in a local interview, calling Alex a wayward daughter who abandoned tradition. She spoke of Daniel as if she were a saint martyred by sin, rescued into the fold of respectability by marrying the right sibling. Every lie was polished, packaged, sold. But Alex was done buying silence. The email came on a Thursday. She wasn't snooping. She was simply cleaning up an old drive when she stumbled upon the folder. Bridal notes _2018. Inside was a draft email Daniel had written but never sent. Subject: if you still love me, Alex, I'm writing this knowing you'll probably never see it. Maybe that's why I can finally say it. They're making me do it. I thought I could pretend. Be the girl. But every fitting feels like a coffin. Every dinner, a funeral. I was never strong enough to fight for you. Maybe that makes me a coward. But I wanted you to know, if I walk down that aisle, it's not because I stopped loving you. It's because I thought you deserved someone who wasn't always bleeding. Forgive me if you can. Alex read it 3 times. Then she stood, walked into the studio, and handed Daniel her phone. Daniel read it. Her shoulders trembled. I don't even remember writing this, she whispered. Alex's voice was calm, focused. That girl thought she had to choose between survival and love. She touched Daniel's cheek. She didn't know we'd build both. That night, Alex didn't sleep. She opened every digital archive she had, every encrypted folder, every photo she'd saved out of instinct but never looked at. She started laying the BREADCRUMBs. The forged signatures on real estate papers, the coercion from their parents, the manipulation John used to lock Daniel into a clean engagement, the inheritance that was legally shifted without consent, emails, tax records, hidden clauses in contracts Daniel never willingly signed. Alex built a case, quietly, obsessively, like an architect designing justice from the ashes. She reached out to women in Portugal's underground legal network, mostly immigrant lawyers, queer activists, and survivors who had lost faith in polite systems. They became her team. By candlelight and Wi-Fi. In cafes and kitchens they worked, not for revenge, for reckoning. Deniel watched her. Sometimes with fear, sometimes with awe, but mostly with pride. One evening, as they watched the sun fall into the ocean, Daniel asked quietly, "Are you ready to go back?" Alex didn't hesitate. "No," she said. "I'm ready to be seen." Her plan was surgical, not public, not chaotic, but undeniable. She would present their case to an international human rights firm, use their network to push legal pressure, fraud, coercion, identity theft, emotional abuse. Portugal's statutes on international manipulation of LGBTQ individuals gave her a unique jurisdictional advantage. John's polished world was a glass house, built on paper lies. Alex didn't need to shatter it. She just needed to show the cracks. Final piece came when a whistleblower, a disgruntled intern from John's office, leaked internal memos. It included private funds redirected for wedding optics and donations, linked to anti-LGBTQ organizations in exchange for campaign support. Everything. John had gained from that marriage was built on exploitation. And now Alex had the receipts. When she sent the dossier to the law firm, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like freedom, not just hers, but Danielle's. And every girl told to smile pretty while being erased. They didn't know what would come next. Lawsuits, subpoenas, public fallout. Maybe even exile from what little family still claimed them. But Alex didn't tremble anymore. She had lived through fire. Now, she was the storm. The air was thick with champagne and curated lies. The ballroom glittered under chandeliers imported from Vienna. Waiters moved like shadows, offering hors d'oeuvres no one ate. Classical music fluttered through hidden speakers. Men in tailored suits traded business cards like promises. Women in silk smiled like survival depended on it. It was the kind of night meant for power to congratulate itself. And into that world, Alex walked. Uninvited, unforgiven, unapologetic. Her heels echoed across the marble floor, not rushed, not hesitant. She wore black silk that clung like memory, and a briefcase that didn't match the DEQ core. Heads turned, whispers bloomed. One voice dared to gasp, Alex. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She walked straight down the aisle of tables, like it was a church, and she was bringing the only honest scripture. John stood on stage, mid-speech. Something about legacy, partnerships, moral values. His voice stuttered when he saw her. The microphone caught it, that hitch in breath. The falter. It spread like wildfire. Even before she reached the dais, the crowd parted like instinct knew. This wasn't a social scene. It was a reckoning. Then another figure stepped in behind her. Daniel. No longer hidden. No longer a ghost. She wore a white suit, hair swept up, eyes unafraid. She walked beside Alex like she had every right to be seen. Because she did. Gasps became murmurs. Murmurs became silence. Alex didn't climb the stairs. To the stage. She ascended. Each step was slow, intentional. She placed the briefcase on the podium. Clicked it open. Documents, folders, photographs, flash drives, and a single envelope addressed to the state attorney's office. She didn't raise her voice, but the room felt like it was holding its breath. I won't take much of your time, she began, eyes locked on her brother. I just wanted to return what doesn't belong to you. She pulled out the deed to Daniel's stolen property, flipped it, stamped with a reversal order. Then came the financial records, red line tracked and notarized, proving misuse of public funds, donations from hate groups, and forged consent forms. A video played behind her, silent but damning. John discussing optics of a clean heterosexual marriage. In a strategy meeting, a voice recording followed. Their mother. Alex is a phase. Daniel just needs a strong man to straighten her out. The room didn't gasp anymore. It collapsed into horror. From the back, two lawyers approached, quiet suits, government badges. John froze. The summons was placed on the podium, then another, and another. Fraud, coercion, human rights violations, and one more envelope, unopened, marked federal. Alex didn't even look at him when she handed it off. I'm not here to ruin you, she said softly. You did that yourself. Then she looked to her mother, still regal, still shellacked in pearls and denial. But you, Alex's voice cracked just once. You tried to rewrite me out of your life like I was a typo. She held up one final document, a photo of her and Daniel 5 years ago, hand in hand on a beach. You tried to erase me, but I became indelible. The silence that followed wasn't hollow. It was sacred. She closed the briefcase, turned. Daniel, reached out. Their fingers met, quietly, naturally, like it had always been allowed. They didn't wait for questions. The ballroom doors opened before them like prophecy. Outside, camera flashes flared. Reporters swarmed. Questions VOLEYED dot, but Alex paused only once. Looked over her shoulder at the building, the name, the legacy dot, then back at DENIEL dot. No need to explain. Truth doesn't beg for understanding dot, it just stands. Later, they sat in the back of a cab, fingers still intertwined. The streets buzzed behind tinted windows. Somewhere the story was already being written, but theirs had already ended. Exactly where it was meant to dot together, dot whole dot scene dot ALYX single quotes. S voice came in narration, steady, calm, a whisper turned anthem. Love isn't something they get to define, and I'm not something they get to bury. I buried them instead, in truth and silence, in justice